How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. A lot of companies are starting to put some of their treasury assets into Bitcoin. They're starting to allocate maybe some of their emergency fund over. And I want to explain the numbers behind that, why it makes so much sense. And I'm going to show you a company that's doing that right now. It's actually a butcher that I tried recently because they just came out and announced that they are putting some of their treasury assets in Bitcoin. They're also putting Bitcoin as an available asset in their 401ks. They also are accepting Bitcoin. I'm also going to explain why I say businesses should start with zero point 0.01 Bitcoin a little bit later in the video. So I think this is really cool, and I want to go through some of the numbers, and maybe if you're a business owner out there, maybe you want to buy some Bitcoin yourself, or maybe you work for a company that may consider buying Bitcoin. This is going to be a fun one, right? There are a variety of reasons why a company would do this. If you don't mind, hit subscribe, turn on the bell notification underneath the video so you can see future videos like this. If you do want to trade cryptocurrency, I'll leave some links to Margex and to Blowfin underneath the video. But let's get into it. So we have Beck and Below, which is now accepting and adopting Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. This is coming out from Bitcoin Magazine just a few weeks ago. So let's go through this article, what they exactly say that they're going to do. Now, I reached out to them because I wanted to try out their products. I wanted to hear more about their story. I'm going to have them on for a video next week. Not a sponsorship or anything like that, but I do have an affiliate code. If you want to use finance15, you get 15% off your order, and we'll show some of the products here in a second because it kind of blew away some of my family members. So Beck and Below, a nationally acclaimed meat and seafood company based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, has announced its decision to accept Bitcoin as a payment online and in-store, as well as include it in their employee 401k. The company also has committed to holding Bitcoin and revenue generated in Bitcoin in its reserves indefinitely. They say, founded in humble beginnings, working farmers markets and selling meat door to door, Beck and Below has grown to play a much bigger role in the meat supply chain in New Mexico. They serve 1,000 restaurants and retailers across the U.S., including luxury hotels and high-end markets. So they've started to expand to a lot of different regions. You can ship it online. And they said that they're going to keep 20% of their treasury assets in Bitcoin for reserves. So that got me thinking, okay, what are the numbers behind this? Like, how much money or how much purchasing power does this give you after years of doing this? So I ran a little model, right? I'm just doing it in Google Sheets, nothing fancy, but I want to show you 3 different companies that adopt different ways of business. Now, some of their products, just so you know, Beck and Below has a lot of bison, which I had never tried bison. I'm gonna be a bit of a shill here for Beck and Below now because it is fantastic. Like I ordered a decent amount, like a handful of different steaks and sausages the other day, and it was andouille sausage, so it's like this, but they're the andouille version. I brought this over to my in-laws, and we had their favorite brats that they bought. We were having burgers for the night, but we cook up some sausages and cut them up and eat them like as an appetizer. They had their favorite brats. Our local butcher that is fantastic. Best brats I've had around here. And to a T, everyone in the family, even the recent vegan that went to start eating meat recently, even they said, everyone said that they liked the bison andouille sausages more, and it wasn't close, which I thought was awesome. I loved them too. Like, I had them and I was blown away. If you haven't tried these, again, I'll leave a link to it underneath the video. It's an affiliate link. You can get 15% off. And then maybe I make a little bit on the back end. I'll probably just ask for meat instead because I want to try out a lot more products from them, a lot more steaks. I'm going to try 2 steaks tonight, but just absolutely fantastic food. 4.9 stars, I believe, on Google as well. Beck and Below. So let's break down the numbers though. Like, we're not going to go into the 401ks, but let's just look at if you started to put some of your reserves in Bitcoin, or you start to accept payment for Bitcoin, what that would mean for you. So I want to go into a couple different scenarios. Okay, company 1. We're going to say that you start with 100K in revenue and you scale it to 300K the next year, 600K, 800K, a million. So yes, this is like a successful business. I didn't get these numbers from back in Below, but I'm just going through some scenarios in my head. Let's say you continue to scale up. So you get up to $1 million in revenue, not profit, just revenue in 5 years. Okay, and then you grow 15% a year after that, up to 15 years. Maybe you want to sell the business or something. You have $4 million in revenue each year. Your profit margin, we'll say the first year, maybe it's negative, but we'll say it's 10%. Then it goes to 15, 20, 25. Then fifth year, it just starts going up 1% a year, up until 36% margin. So you're making a good amount of profit. By the end, you're making $1.4 million a year. Keep in mind too, in 15 years, who knows what $1.4 million is actually worth. But let's say you continue to grow. You go from 10K to, in year 5, you're making 260K in profit, all the way up to $500,000 in year 9, and then $1 million in year 13, and so on. But you have to keep some cash reserves. Unfortunately, for every business, you have to keep some reserves because a machine could break, or maybe you don't get paid on time, or you have to go to a different building, you have moving costs, or maybe something goes wrong and you just can't sell your product for some reason. Maybe some kind of COVID situation breaks out. So you have to have some cash reserves. We're going to say you have 6 months of cash reserves. Now, how are we figuring this out? Well, we're taking our revenue minus our profit and dividing by 2. So we get 6 months of reserves. Now, some people might say, well, there are going to be some costs in your revenue that you don't have to pay for, right? Let's say we shut down. We're not going to still have the same cost of the actual products that we're selling, but let's just be conservative. Let's say, everything that's not profit, we're going to take 6 months of and put it in a bank account somewhere. Okay, so $45,000. The next year it goes up to 127. This is conservative, but some people do this. Some people have a year's worth of revenue. I know it sounds crazy, but some people do. They want extra padding, or maybe they are saving up to buy a building or their own building or something. So, okay, you continue down the line. Year 15, you're sitting on, there you go. We're sitting on almost $1.3 million in cash. Now, again, maybe your purchasing power gets eroded. Let's say 3% a year for 15 years. That means that this 1.3 million is actually more like 800,000, but let's continue. You've scaled up operations. Maybe you have trucks now. You need some assets there just sitting in that account. So, okay, you have this $1.3 million. Great. Maybe Fed lowers rates a little bit. You're making like 2-3% on it. Okay, you're making $20,000, $30,000 a year. Let's go to company 2. Everything is going to be exactly the same in terms of revenue, in terms of profit, but we're going to assume that this company goes and buys Bitcoin, right? And not their entire treasury is going into Bitcoin, but just 20%. So they have 6 months reserves. They're putting 20% into Bitcoin. Then the next year, right, they had 45,000. Now they have 127,000. So take the difference, put 20% of Bitcoin. So $16,500 into Bitcoin. This continues. They continue year after year putting more into Bitcoin, right? So at the end, instead of just 1.3 million, they also have some Bitcoin. So they have 80% of that 1.3 million. So somewhere around, 1 million in cash. But then they also have been accumulating Bitcoin, about 3.4. Now, in this scenario, we're going to just say that Bitcoin goes up 1.2 times a year. So 20% a year for the next 15 years. This puts us underneath a $1 million Bitcoin. And this is the end of the 2030s. So pretty conservative, I'd say. Pretty conservative. We could always go more, right? If you go by 1.25 or 25%, that's going to put Bitcoin at a much higher price. That instead of about 870K would be 1.47 million, but we're just going to be conservative and say that you can only continue to add, and you never take anything out. You never have to pay for anything. We're going to assume that you get up to 3.3 Bitcoin. Now, the value of your Bitcoin at this time would be about 2.8 million. So you have about the 1 million in cash, a little bit over a million. Then you have 2.8 million in Bitcoin. At this point, I mean, that's a significant amount, right? What's the difference here? So 1 year of appreciation on your Bitcoin, 600K, that's almost half of your profit. So you could increase like the amount that you actually make by 40, 50% just by holding some Bitcoin. And this is with it appreciating 20%. Some people would say, no, it's going to appreciate much more than that. But let's go into the third scenario. Let's say you not only put some of your treasury assets in Bitcoin, but you also get paid in Bitcoin. So we're going to assume that you also take 20% of your profit and put into Bitcoin. Now, you could also have people start paying you. Let's say 20% of your revenue comes into Bitcoin. Like Beck and Bulow say that they are going to keep all of the revenue that comes in that's Bitcoin. So maybe they have a lot of customers that start paying with Bitcoin. Maybe Bitcoin continues to move up. People want to support a good Bitcoin business. Again, you can do that with the link underneath the video. They want to go support a good Bitcoin business. So they go pay in Bitcoin. Let's say 20% of the revenue comes in. That's going to be a significant amount. So instead of $11,000, right, we're talking about 20 grand in revenue, then also 9 grand in reserves that's going to go into Bitcoin. But let's cut that out. Let's just say 20% of the profit and 20% of the reserves go into Bitcoin. So instead of $9,000 that first year, we're going to buy $11,000, and then it continues to scale up. I mean, by the end, it's a lot more profitable. So 20% of this 1.5 million in profits going to go into Bitcoin. Let's say that continues. We have the same price for Bitcoin. It goes up to $834,000. So you buy 0.17 Bitcoin the first year, and then you get all the way up to almost buying a Bitcoin a year. But keep in mind, your business revenue is going to grow slower than the price of Bitcoin. So eventually you're going to have this tipping point where you're not able to buy as much, but it continues to appreciate. By the end of this, you get 11 Bitcoin. Now, at the end, you're making $2 million a year from appreciation and buying a little bit more Bitcoin, right? You're buying a little bit more Bitcoin, but you're making more from the appreciation on your Bitcoin stack than you are from the underlying business that's growing revenue significantly, 15% a year, and growing their profit by even more than that because the profit margin's also going up at the same time revenue is going up. So you have a very successful business, and you still can't outcompete Bitcoin if you save in Bitcoin or invest in Bitcoin. I've shown this before with my own rental property. I put some of the reserves in Bitcoin. I actually put half of the reserves over in Bitcoin. I did a Bitcoin ETF just because it was a little bit easier to keep track of. But if you want to hold Bitcoin, there are other benefits of it as well, right? Like how many businesses almost went bankrupt because of Silicon Valley Bank? This was a bank that served a lot of companies, and a lot of people had payroll. This bank failed, and then people were worried, hey, I'm literally not going to be able to pay my employees. I need the $8 million every 2 weeks that we pay to our employees, or the $4 million or the $2 million. And that's well above that $250,000 threshold. I have no assets besides what's in this bank. What am I going to do? How am I going to meet my bills? Right? We have this business that's making millions of dollars each year. There's no problem there. But then something that I've never considered, that a bank would go bankrupt, right? Bankrupt. A bank is going bankrupt. It's kind of crazy that can even happen, right? But they were going to go out of business. Now they got bailed out in the end. But I think it made a lot of people realize that Bitcoin can be good for other reasons too. Besides just price appreciation, you can hold on to Bitcoin. And then if you need to make payments, you have some options there. Maybe you can pay in Bitcoin. Maybe you can just go sell some of your Bitcoin, withdraw it, and then use that. But there are various reasons that you would hold Bitcoin besides just the price appreciation. So again, if you do want to support this Bitcoin business, well, one, you could go buy some Bitcoin yourself and make your business start buying some Bitcoin. Maybe you want to buy some Bitcoin. And a third reason why some people might want to buy Bitcoin for their business, you get a lot of publicity, right? Like how many companies have started accepting Bitcoin and they get posted on Bitcoin Magazine or Bitcoin Archive, right? And then you get 211,000 views because of it. That's a lot of free publicity. So yes, you can go buy some Bitcoin, or you can allow your business to start buying Bitcoin. You can also support them directly. You can go buy some of their meat. I mean, I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. This is some of the best meat that I've had. I've only tried the andouille sausages so far, but I have, like I said, a ribeye steak and a tenderloin fillet for tonight. Gonna try it out. Salt, pepper, S&P, low and slow, one flip, done. So I'm gonna try that out. Now, the specific reason I say businesses should start with 0.01 Bitcoin, it's a bit arbitrary, but that's a nice round number. It gets you started buying Bitcoin in a way where you learn the process. You learn where to go. You learn what you have to connect to. You learn how to hopefully self-custody. And you actually start. That's the hardest thing for so many people, is to start buying Bitcoin. So if you start buying by 0.01, maybe that's just the first step. We see that with a lot of Bitcoin wallets. Some of the richest wallets in the world start with 0.01. They send it to their wallet, and they make sure everything works. And then they start buying a significant amount, or they start sending over a significant amount. So if you've got a business that does $5 million in revenue, just try 0.01, see how it sits, see how you feel emotionally. And then maybe you want to buy, one Bitcoin or a couple Bitcoin or half a Bitcoin, a quarter Bitcoin, whatever. The number doesn't matter as much. Just make sure, obviously, that it fits with your own risk and your own strategy for your business. But it could be a great corporate strategy moving forward. Let me know your thoughts on all this underneath the video. Thank you so much. Let me know if you'd ever consider putting some of your corporate reserves in Bitcoin. I'll see you in the next one.